in my office today. I felt really inspired to come on here and talk with you all about some themes coming up, some ways to deal with the world, which is just a whole lot right now. And so I thought that we would just jump right into it. One of the things that I talk about with people is something called dialectics, or walking the middle path. So where I'm talking about this from a clinical perspective, I'm talking from the place of dialectical behavioral therapy, which was started by Marshall Linehan and originally was started for people who were hospitalized with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. Not going to go into all of that today, and actually there are so many great therapists out there talking about BPD, borderline personality disorder, and the pros and cons of that diagnosis and what that means. So I'll put a couple of their links down below if you're curious about it. But what I really want to focus on is that where this model and this ability to work with skillful means has adapted over time and where we are now. So what are dialectics? I explain dialectics as the ability to look at the scales of tensions, conflicts, dilemmas that we are constantly faced with in today's world. And this isn't a new concept. So it's been around, it's been a part of a lot of philosophical debate throughout time. But again, in this day and age where we're at, where it's adapted to, is that it can really be a skillful means. And the reason that I'm focusing on the skillful means at this point is because we are really faced with a lot of dilemmas and a lot of conflict in our world right now. And whether that's internally in our relationships and or in the world around us. So what I'm hoping you can take away from this is how to use what dialectics are pointing out to us, and then how to do what we call in DBT walking the middle path or the middle way. And being able to, it's not necessarily compromising, but being able to discern in each situation or each circumstance that comes up that creates these dilemmas or conflicts for you, to be able to find a way forward with that. In the strictest sense, a lot of the times our minds and the world kind of gravitate towards things being in what we call a binary system, which is yes or no, black or white, success or failure. And although those might be part of what we are facing into, it's not the only options, or it's not the full spectrum of what's going on. So there can be success and there can be failure. We're not taking that away, but what we're asking you to do is expand beyond just those two options. So in a non-binary perspective, it could be success and failure, and breaking it down. And we forget how we got there is through a discernment of different judgments and different shortcuts. So in some cases, one of the examples that I was given early on to help me understand this as a clinician was, if you go to the fish market, which I would never be at the fish market because I don't love fish, but this is the example. If you go to the fish market and you look at the person behind the counter and say, is this fish good? You don't want them to maybe break down all of the different idiosyncrasies of how long it's been sitting there or where it came from, or you just want a yes or no. You just want to be like, yeah, that's fresh today. Or, well, it depends. If you're not going to go home and make it tonight, then it might not be good by tomorrow. So those things are shortcuts that get us to the efficient, quick answers that this world demands of us a lot of the times. And there's so much that's unexplained and missed when we just look at yes or no. We don't consider any of the other options, any of the other ways that we could be problem solving, or even considering other perspectives. So if we feel like what I'm doing is good, so if anyone's doing the opposite of what I'm doing, then it has to be bad. We're missing so much information in there. And it can not only hurt our relationships when we do that, but it can really limit our world perspective and our ability to maybe even emotionally manage some of these harder conflicts that are coming up in our world today. So what do dialectics teach us? Well, first they teach us that there's always more than one perspective or more than one way to solve a problem. They're also teaching us that the perspective of all or nothing thinking or this or that thinking is limited. So it's also explaining to us that we have more than one point of view. So if you have more than one person, maybe even if you have one person, I know that I constantly try to see things from the different perspectives that could possibly be going on, even if I'm the only one involved. But when we're talking about definitely having more than one person involved, you are going to have a perspective. When I used to run groups, I would do this challenge to the group members. I would throw something out that was multi-dimensional in the middle of the room that had different shapes, colors, things on different sides of it. So sometimes it'd be a Kleenex box or a toy that we had. And I would say you're only allowed to describe this thing from the perspective of where you're sitting and exactly what you can see. So even if you know that the other side of that is blue, all you can see is yellow, you're only allowed to talk about what you can see and sense from where you're sitting. And it was a way to really practice this idea of having multiple perspectives, and which leads us to the other thing that dialectics teach us, which is that two things that seem opposing can both be true at the same time. So if my perspective is that this thing in the middle of the room is blue, and the person sitting across from me is like, it's not blue, it's clearly yellow. Well, those two colors seem to be opposing. However, both of those things were true at the same time because this item had multiple sides and different patterns to it. So we were both honestly looking at it from our perception and seeing it the way we saw it, but the other person had a totally different perception. The last two things that dialectics teach us is that change is the only constant. So nothing is permanent and can appear to be permanent, but when we explore that a little bit more, really everything is in a constant state of change. I tell my clients that even the people that they are when they entered the session are not the same people who leave the session. If nothing else, we're 55 minutes into our lives, so we're a little bit older, and our cells have changed. We've had so many heartbeats per minute. We're not the exact same in every single moment. So change is constant. And the last thing that dialectics teach us is truth evolves with time. Again, when I'm talking about this with people, I invite them in to think like, tell me something that you really truly believed wholeheartedly without any doubt in your mind when you were 8 years old. So there were things that when you were 8, you absolutely believe. You would get in a real argument with somebody on the playground about what that was. But now you've learned over time that that really wasn't the case, that either you were misinformed or you got new facts that then didn't hold up with that truth, and then you adapted that yourself over time. So this is what we mean by truth evolving over time. And remembering that one single person or one single entity does not have an absolute truth. And this is a very philosophical thing, I'm sure plenty of people know a lot more than me about, but in the very basics of this is we can uphold and say there is an absolute truth out there. And not one person has the absolute truth, because everything that we do, everything we think, everything we feel, everything that is a behavior of ours is a conditioned response through our experiences and our perception. This is what creates our reality. So we really can only experience life through that reality, through those lenses, and through our sense perceptions and experiences. So we decide what reality is based on common threads of things matching up or not matching up. But ultimately, one person cannot say this is an absolute truth beyond anything known. Even science, when science tries to say they have an absolute truth figured out, there's always somebody that can come along and say, well, what about this? And then through scientific measure and means, they can explore that and find out, oh, hey, there's actually more to this than we thought. Or that was true to an extent, but here's more information. So these are the core principles of dialectics. So the spectrum that this is really working with is the spectrum between acceptance and change. Acceptance can be a hard word for people to really wrap their heads around in this way, because what we're not saying is that we fully accept without question, with being 100% okay with whatever is happening around us, right? So we're not giving it permission. We're not saying that we are even emotionally aligned or okay with something. But acceptance in this way is really to accept what's there, accept the situation as it is, just as it is, without the extra storylines, validating that, okay, this thing has happened. Okay, I have certain feelings around this thing, or that person's having a different experience than I'm having around this situation. That's acceptance and validation. Versus challenge and change on the other side is, what are we looking to take action towards or against? What are we attempting to think differently about? What are we attempting to behave in a different way around? So these, again, are kind of at the opposing sides, and what we call walking the middle path is trying to find the balance. And that does not mean 50-50 split. That does not mean I come and meet this person halfway all the time, or that I always have to start with the acceptance and validation of what's going on and move to change and challenge. I can start there of like, I am not okay with this. This has to be different. And then work my way back from there and say, okay, but what do I need to accept in this moment so that I can get to that change? So we kind of just get to be where we are with something, which is beautiful. And it also gives us some skillful means of trying to find the right balance for ourselves or that situation in this moment. Why would we want to work from a middle path perspective rather than getting stuck in these extremes? Well, first and foremost, it's to try and find solutions. And I'm not saying that every conflict or every situation has a quick, easy, effective solution. I'm talking more from a place where if I'm stuck in my emotions, then what is the next possible thing that I can do given my resources, my resiliencies, my vulnerabilities, the circumstances around this, to help me move in a direction that again, might not be pleasant, might not be what we want. It might not be the final outcome of where we want to land, but it gets us moving in that direction. So again, that's one reason why we would use this. The other reason is to unstick ourselves in very complex emotional states or in conflicts and arguments, to not get stuck there and spinning our wheels. And the other two are to be more approachable, to just be more open, to having more discussions, being able to sit in complicated things with other people or in situations that either need our attention or where we want to direct our attention. And then also, my favorite, trying to avoid assuming and blaming. When we assume and we blame, and I talked about this in my anger video, so when we assume and we blame, we're actually giving our power away. We're not actually doing anything but just kind of throwing our emotions or that anger, that blame out there, and we leave ourselves really vulnerable or feeling really powerless after that. That's not to say that we can't hold people accountable, that we can't make requests, that we can't challenge what's happening, that we can't say, okay, this is the reality of this, but I'm not willing to accept that as a sustainable long-term reality. So what do I have in my means and my resources to work towards that change? So these are the reasons we would work with the middle path skills. All right, so what the how-to guide for walking the middle path. These are simple instructions. They are not easy to actually carry out. So the first is we're moving away from either or to both and language, and we're going to eliminate always, never kind of language from the conversation or from our overall general dialects of how we're presenting things. And this can look like saying a but or and saying, wait, I meant and. So it takes practice to notice it, but once you start noticing it, I promise you, you will catch yourself, and then eventually it will just become such a part of the way that you're thinking. It will take no effort at all over time. The second thing is practicing looking at all sides of a situation or points of view. They kind of talk about finding the kernel of truth in every side or every thought. Sometimes that can be quite challenging. So again, just even if we are really stuck in our own emotion or our own point of view, just understanding that someone else has had this other experience, or this person I'm in conflict with might be seeing this from a different perspective. Right now, I can only see it from my perspective, and that's what I have to work with. But even being able to get some flexibility in there of like, okay, maybe they're seeing it in a different way. I'm just not there yet. That's perfectly fine. That's working from where you're at on how we can try to start to work with this as a skillful means. Remembering that no one has an absolute truth, as I stated before, so trying to be open to alternatives. Things, especially in very complicated, complex situations, are not going to be as straightforward and easy as we want them to be. I'm with you. I would like things to be straightforward, easy, and effective. I often play the game of the world according to Jessica. I think it's a lovely place to live, but I also understand that there will be plenty of people that would object to things that I think are easy or effective, and I try to remember that when I'm feeling frustrated about those things. Number 4 is using I feel statements, or just I statements in general rather than you statements like you are or you should. I also try to tell my clients really should, if you're going to use it, using it in the directive of should implicates an expectation. So if you're shoulding on yourself or you're shoulding all over everyone else, realize that what you're actually doing is identifying expectations. And sometimes it's great to have expectations, but those expectations might not be signed on by everyone or understood by everyone or even agreed upon by everyone. So they're your expectations, therefore they're your responsibility. So instead of using those you or should statements, trying to use I and direct it towards I think or I feel or my experience is, and trying to convey that from that perspective. Accepting different opinions that can be valid, even if we don't agree with them. So this one's a hard one to bite off in social media and from other perspectives. One of the ways I work with this is a phrasing that came from my Buddhist studies, which is just like me. So just like me, that person wants to feel safe. Just like me, that person wants to feel like they belong. Just like me, that person wants to understand but can't. Just like me, that person thinks that they're doing the right thing and they don't understand why everyone has such a problem with it or are resisting so much. So you can make statements like that to try and at least understand there can be something valid in someone's argument or perspective that you just simply don't agree with. And not agreeing is okay. We don't have to agree with everything. We don't have to understand everything. Work towards being able to sit in that and understand that that does not necessarily mean there's no validity or choosing not to accept anything that's coming from that. So again, simple, definitely not easy. So the next skillful means of working with the middle path is do not assume that you know what other people are thinking or that other people know what you are thinking. So try to check your assumptions. What did you mean when you said? Or what I'm hearing you say is this. Is that correct? So many of our interpersonal conflicts could end right here if we just stop making assumptions that people know what we're thinking or feeling. I know this is hard because maybe we've conveyed something to someone or we think that we've done the best we can to let that person know, hey, this isn't okay for me. That doesn't mean that they understood it. That doesn't mean they remember it. That doesn't mean that the next time it comes up, they're going to be able to predict that for you. It's tough. It's really important to do that clarification. And I ask people to think about for themselves. How hard is it when you notice a thought or an emotion to change that for yourself, even when you want to? How hard is it for you to remember when other people have said something to you or asked you for something? Maybe you're the kind of person that that's not a challenge for you, but for a lot of people it really is. So trying to work with that, again, from where you're at, no one likes repeating themselves. When we work with it from, okay, how am I communicating this versus did I get clear understanding from them? Can I check in with something? These are the way we build this skill. Closing for today, because I don't want to make this go on for too long. What we're doing when we are working with dialectics is we are trying to find a balance between acceptance and validation and challenge and change. We can be where we are in that process. We are still allowed to feel our feelings, our feelings are always valid for us. Nobody is responsible for our feelings except for us. Nobody has to know what we're feeling except for us. So these are the things that we can accept and then also challenge and change over time. The reason I feel called at this point to have done this video is because we're sitting in a lot of complexity. It's very clear that many of us do not know where to go or how to challenge what it is that we don't agree with, and how to accept how we got here, where we are. And again, this is on an individual level, an interpersonal level, and the world around us. Going forward, this is going to be one of the most important skills that we have. We're going to have hard conversations with ourselves, with the people around us, and in the world. We are going to have to face some hard truths. And I think that there are so many beautiful skills out there, but and see, even a professional like me can get caught up on the either or thinking. So, and we need to move forward in some kind of way. We need to look within ourselves to face into what that is. We need to look at our relationships and find impactful, effective ways that we can communicate our needs and, validate the different perspectives, but find ways forward back towards each other. And that doesn't mean stay in toxic relationships or, put up with abuse. That's definitely not the message here. But everything that's not in those very clear extreme things, it's really going to be important for all of us to be working from this skillful means, from this place of finding balance within ourselves and around us. And I hope that this is helpful for you. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to go ahead and comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and share. I know I haven't been putting things out as consistently. I'm doing a lot, which I will come back on here and share in a future date. But I really am glad that I got to do this video, and I would love to hear your thoughts and comments. Until next time.